So compared to most stories I cover, this one has a very limited amount of information that's publicly available, but the call itself tells you everything you need to know about the event, so that just means we're going to be getting into the call a little quicker. On Sunday, October 4th, 2020, a 42-year-old woman named Denise Nichols from Port Orange, Florida, was going about her life as usual, enjoying her Sunday and just making the most of the weekend. She'd eat a few good meals, talk to a couple of her friends, and just watch a bit of TV. Nothing special happened that day, but nothing bad or suspicious happened to her house either. The day was satisfying. So later in the evening, Denise would eventually end up just laying down and falling asleep. In the middle of her sleep, however, something awful was about to happen that no innocent human being should ever have to experience. In the early morning of Monday, October 5th, so about halfway through her sleep at this point, Denise would wake up to her absolute worst nightmare, the smell of smoke and the sight of flames beginning to spread across her motorhome. See, this would be a nightmare for anyone, but in Denise's case, it was particularly bad. Denise Nichols was actually disabled, and so it was impossible for this poor lady to move at the rate that she needed in order to beat the speed that the fire was spreading. Again, because of sparse details, we don't know exactly how late into the fire that she woke up, but we all know how fast fires could spread, and given that her residence was not big at all, this was a horrible, horrible situation for a disabled person to be in, because she'd need a bit more time than the average person to set up for her escape. Neighbors recount that they could hear her screaming from the inside of her place as the flames overtook it, and so that, combined with the sight of the fire, would cause a few of them to wake up and run outside to check what was going on. One of the nearby neighbors would immediately call 911 after waking up to this disaster, and here's how that call went down.
911, where's your emergency?
Hi, I'm in the Rosebay Trailer Park. 5200 South Norwood Road. What? 28 trailers burning. It's on fire. There's a woman inside of it.
Okay, you said 5200 Norwood Road. What city?
Port Orange, ma'am. Port Orange.
Is anybody inside the mobile home?
Yes, there's a crippled woman inside.
She can't get out?
No, she's crippled.
Okay. And what's on fire?
The trailer. Her mobile home is on fire, but she lives it.
Okay, so, I'm sorry. I just want to specify it. Is it the entire thing? You can see smoke and
Yes.
flames?
Yes, huge flames. It's going up
Okay.
now.
I already have the call up for the fire department, okay? The fire, is it in the front of the mobile home, on the
It's on
side?
the side of it, the whole motor home.
Okay.
She's laying inside. We can't get her out.
Okay. 1 second. I'm just going to update them, okay? Can you guys see her from where you're at?
She's burning to death. The flames are coming out of her room.
Okay, just try to... I don't want you guys to go in there, okay? That's the most important thing, because if you go in there, it's not helping the situation.
It just went up, ma'am.
Hold on.
She's in there dying. The screen is on fire now.
Okay, they're on the way. I just need you to help me...
The trees are on fire. She's done. Get out of there!
Don't let anybody go in there.
Get out! Get out!
Okay, and she's disabled and can't move at all.
She's dead.
Why do you say that?
Because she stopped screaming.
Hang on.
They've got a hose on it, a garden hose.
Who is?
My dad's got a garden hose on it, but she...
Okay.
Dad, get away from it! Shit's blowing up! It's over there!
If it's exploding or anything is doing that, definitely tell them to just stop putting water on it, because we don't know what started the fire.
We're getting them out of there now, Mel.
Okay.
We've got...
And nobody went into the mobile home, right?
My dad and the neighbor went in to try to save her. She was laying on the floor and there were flames. She was already screaming. I looked out my window and came out here and saw the fire.
Okay. And are they out and they're okay? Sir?
They're out and they're okay.
Okay. Are they...
This is...
Yeah, the fire department's almost there, okay? They're coming as fast as they can.
What?
But you're... Sir?
Hey, stay the other side. Get out of here. Everything.
If she has an oxygen tank in there, that's what's going to cause that. So you need to keep people away from it, okay?
I don't know what she had, ma'am. I've only ever talked to her once, and I know she was crippled. There's something right in there flaming up.
Okay. Listen, can you check with your father and the other person? They don't need an ambulance, do they?
No.
Okay.
They keep standing out of your way.
I need to keep you on the phone until the help gets there, okay? Because there's an officer almost there, too.
I hear flames. I hear ambulance.
You still see this?
As of the posting of this video, there still hasn't been any public updates on the results of her autopsy, but the fire was not suspected to have started under any suspicious circumstances, which is at least good. Rest in peace to Denis Nichols. I send my deepest condolences to her family, and I hope they found some sort of peace since this situation occurred. Nobody should ever have to go through something like this, and to imagine what she dealt with in those last few minutes is far beyond my capabilities. So this is one of those topics that this platform just genuinely does not like, to the point that even saying the name of the event or showing any footage will get you demonetized or restricted, which to me is absolutely pathetic because it's a major historical event and these days it's only usually discussed in an educational sense. So just a heads up, I'm going to be annoyingly careful with my words. This entry was introduced to me several months ago when a very reliable source and archiver named Between Two Towers broke it to me, and they provided me with some incredibly valuable information that you're going to see shortly. So huge shout out to them and everyone else over at the archive. It has very little coverage, if any, and I have a feeling that after this video comes out, you're going to hear about it a lot more. I wanted to do an entire video on it alone, but as we've learned, those videos don't usually do that well on this channel. The story begins with an early 2000s Google Groups user named Xynopol, which, if we reverse the letters, spells out the name Leo Phoenix. So that's what I'm going to call him. On August 30th of 2001, Leo Phoenix made a post to the Google group alt.prophecies.nostradamus. The post was titled 9/11, where he would go on to make a very alarming prophetic post, predicting some sort of major catastrophe in the near future. I'm going to show you part of what his post says, and then we'll get to the other stuff after. This is a witness against everyone on this news group. I hate this news group and everyone on it sucks. You are all evil liars. Do not be so evil and be holy. You're gonna get me ended because of the truth of my mouth. I'm not telling you what is going to happen until it does, because an evil and adulterous generation seeks for a sign. See, Leo was a pretty avid user of this group and was known to be a highly religious person, often making prophecies and continually showing his distaste for government entities and the state of the West. So naturally, this one didn't particularly stand out and most people just breezed by it. When people started to question or doubt him and ask what he was talking about though, Leo Phoenix responds with, "Wait 7 days and then maybe I'll answer this post. You see, I'm going away in 7 days and you will not hear from me again." Now, at first this just seems like another excuse not to answer the pushback, but when we zoom out and look at the date this was posted, things take an incredibly different direction. This post was made on September 4th of 2001, and counting 7 days forward brings us to the date of one of the most infamous and horrible events in recent history. Leo Phoenix had just predicted the horrible events of this day on a public forum just a week before it happened. His posts clearly showed that he was a religious fanatic, vehemently despised the Western world, and claimed that bad things were going to happen, and now he just predicted the day with great accuracy. After the attacks on that fateful morning, the post almost immediately caught attention again, and within the same day, a massive amount of users were flooding the thread. By this point, people were already rightfully convinced that Leo had to have some sort of insider knowledge or involvement in the catastrophe, and it was with good reason. So the question is, what did Leo know? The thread continued to be flooded with many highly emotional and threatening posts, and that's no surprise as the events had literally just happened, but a lot of them are very interesting nonetheless, like these ones that say, "Xynopol seems to have known something, and this is definitely more than a coincidence. Seems like he was one of the hijackers of some plane in these days' attacks. Freaky." People continued to call him out, and Leo would eventually log back on and start defending himself. And of course, almost immediately, many people tipped this guy off to the FBI, where he got even more defensive. "Everyone who reports this to the FBI will be cursed. Do not do so evil. I said many times that I'm innocent. You all saw how the ATF and FBI dealt with David Koresh at Waco. How do you think they'll deal with me? How could you be so evil? Do you even care what they did at Waco? Now you would want the same for me. Why again? Because the US government took down the World Trade Center." I will say, considering that last sentence was not even 12 hours after things began, And the fact that nowadays this is pretty much everyone's leading theory, he was certainly ahead of his time in that sense. Either way though, people followed through with what they said, and the FBI would quickly be after this guy. Within the next couple of days, Leo Phoenix went quiet, and articles started popping up saying that he was arrested. Weirdly, very few American news platforms or broadcasts would discuss this, making many people think that there was something they were already hiding. One article I could find though was from Euronews on September 13th, and reads, "Breaking news on Euronews TV. One of the individuals using the nickname Xenopol was traced and arrested about 1 hour ago. His brother put himself in the spotlight by revealing information about the terrorist attacks before the event, using the same nickname. FBI agents who normally work undercover on the internet, pretending to be youngsters baiting and tracing predators, started online discussions with the suspect to get as much information as possible out of them, while other officials were tracing the IP addresses used by the suspect. Euronews also revealed some very bizarre information which confirms what some of you in here already suspected. The initial Xenopol is likely to be involved in the attacks." People were infuriated with this individual, and given that it was so soon after the events, many believe that he played some sort of role in this, and again, with very good reason. But now, almost 20 years later, we know so much more, and I rarely hear anyone discuss Xenopol or Leo Phoenix. Why could this be? Is there something being hidden, and was this man actually involved with anything? I'm pretty confident that I have an answer to this and have gotten to the bottom of this one, so let's move forward to some of the other information and more details that came out later. See, what I didn't show you when I read the initial post is the very first sentence. He actually started it with, "Something is going to happen tomorrow," and remember, this was initially posted on August 30th. Once this didn't pan out, someone came back and said, "Well, your tomorrow was yesterday and nothing happened." And then Leo said, "Wait 7 days and then maybe I'll answer your post. You see, I'm going away in 7 days and you will not hear from me again." I don't know if it's just me, but I'm interpreting this response in a completely different way than what the general consensus is. To me, it doesn't look like he said that something would happen in 7 days. It looks like he said he might reply to a question in 7 days. That's just my interpretation though, and again, it could very well be incorrect. Maybe these attacks could have originally been planned for a couple weeks earlier or whatever, and then he had to update, but still, this does change a lot. Additionally, there were a lot of claims that Leo Phoenix went back and retroactively edited his posts to take things out. A lot of people who were on the forum claim to remember seeing the initial post have things about Bin Laden on it, or that the original subject field was not actually 9/11. Usually, it would be pretty impossible to confirm something like this on such an old post, as most archives came much later, but by some insane work from the guys over at the archive, I was able to get my hands on some super exclusive and old ones that were created not even 16 hours after everything happened. Let's just say this was not easy for them to get. It turns out that the individual behind these files was active in that forum at that very time, and along with this, he also has dated archives of an insane amount of information pertaining to these events. Pictures, videos, forums upon forums, everything. There's nothing top secret or anything like that, but for purely archival purposes, it's pretty amazing. None of this has been posted anywhere, and for the privacy of the individual involved in getting us this, I'm not going to be giving any names, details, or showing anything else. One thing I will say is that this guy was a network manager for a government data center, and he went into his work and used their 200 megabyte connection years ago to archive all of this. Why is this big file important to this video? Well, as previously mentioned, it turns out that he has archives of this Google group from not even 16 hours after the attacks. And through this, we can go back and see if the original post actually looked any different at that point, or if it had anything that was later removed. And when we do so, we can clearly see that the post is exactly as it read in the later archives, meaning that as of that night, the post was still the same. Of course, he could have edited it in like the 16 hours prior, but these are likely the oldest archives to ever exist of this forum, and likely the only ones. This is truly as far back as we can go. A lot of other users say that he edited them while the attacks were occurring, so do with that information what you will. I personally don't think he actually went back and changed any details, and even if he did, once we look a little further into the Leo Phoenix story, I think you'll see that it doesn't really matter. As I showed you before, there were articles saying that he was arrested, but many ended up actually just being sketchy and also false news stories. Like, for example, Euronews TV had a sort of hack job reputation back then, so the veracity of whatever I read you in that excerpt is highly debatable. And in an online interview I found later that week, Leo Phoenix even said that the FBI ended up at his front door the next day and left within 30 minutes. They didn't even take his computer, so to me, it's unlikely that this man actually had anything to do with these horrible events, and was more of just a self-proclaimed religious prophet, which was the entire point of this group. His online career as a prophet didn't work out very well though, as he made quite a few other predictions that didn't end up being true whatsoever, like these ones. I think there will be a terrible earthquake in Los Angeles in 2003. I'm sorry if I'm wrong about this, but if you live in that city, just get out right now because I know global warming will force you to leave by 2007 anyways. After global warming, the next thing you will see is Mars crash into the Earth and leave red dust all over China, Japan, going over towards the UK, and everything in the sea will die. Get out of the sea at that time. No one should be in China and Japan or the UK. No one should live by the coast by 2007. If everyone did this, I just think how many lives would be saved. There was a pretty considerable California earthquake on the 22nd of December in 2003 that caused a couple people to pass away and hundreds of millions in damages, but it doesn't really line up with the scale of an event that he was talking about. Also, he claimed with a lot of conviction that he knew everyone would be forced out of LA by the year 07 due to changes in climate, and despite some of the horrible things that happened there recently, the city still very much exists and has not been swallowed by the ocean. Yet. And of course he said Mars would crash into the Earth, which I could be wrong, but I don't think that's happened yet, nor is that even possible from a physics perspective. Nonetheless, it's an incredibly interesting rabbit hole, and there's probably a lot more to this that even I couldn't find through research, and given its age, that makes a lot of sense. To me, I think this was nothing more than a bit of an eccentric guy making a ton of vague predictions and seemingly getting one right. After all, if this was actually true, this guy would likely be at least some form of a household name. But either way, I'm just curious to hear what you guys think. This next entry is straight up one of the darkest things I've come across since beginning this series. It took place in China in October of 2021, but was only released publicly in the past 8 or 9 months, and trust me when I say you should not go looking for it. At least not the versions that show what happens afterwards. On October 8th, 2021, a 28-year-old Chinese man was leaving his flat and heading out to go take care of some things on his to-do list. His form of transportation was an e-bike, so anytime he wasn't riding, he would bring his battery up into his flat to charge it for his next ride. In this case, the man was leaving the flat to go out, so the battery was fully charged up. Either way, CCTV footage catches him walking to the elevator in his building, entering, and then pressing the ground floor button. Out of nowhere, and just after the doors close, this lithium-based e-bike battery completely blows up in one of the biggest fires and displays of smoke I've seen from a portable battery of that size. It all happens within just a few seconds, and he immediately reacts and attempts to get out of the lift. Unfortunately, the man was just slightly too late. The doors were closed, the elevator was already moving, and the man was trapped inside as the explosion only continued to worsen. Here's where the camera's mounted in the elevator and him just walking in. And here's what we see just 3 seconds later. It's some absolutely intense stuff to watch, but what's more intense is the next part of the video. The public video release also includes CCTV footage of the floor that the elevator was traveling to, and it's here that we can see 2 individuals waiting to catch a ride. As the door opens, they are completely thrown back by what it opens up to, and are more than likely hearing the man's agony and seeing the fire in its entirety. They're very shocked, but the man runs to get building staff, and it appears that the woman is calling an emergency line, so they were quick to react and do the right thing. The next shot pans to a series of people utilizing fire extinguishers before slowly pulling the man out of the lift. And of course, this is the part that I don't recommend. The individual is understandably almost completely black and charred from the event, and to think that this individual was conscious when this happened makes me sick to my stomach, and again, I can't even begin to imagine what he or Denis from the earlier story had to experience. Chinese officials released this footage to serve as a handling warning for lithium-based batteries. There were some random claims circulating that the battery created some sort of magnetic field when the elevator was turned on, but that's not true. It was likely some sort of fault within the battery itself. In the aftermath, this poor man would last in the hospital for another 28 days, which I can only imagine were completely insufferable. It was only after 28 days that he would pass on, finally succumbing to the battery accident that occurred nearly a month earlier.